Hours after launching, this ship became the deadliest maritime disaster in American history. Worse than the Titanic, and almost nobody has ever heard of it. On April 27, 1865, a steamboat rated for 376 passengers left port, carrying more than 2,100 people. Most of the men aboard had just survived Confederate prison camps, like Andersonville and Cahaba, among the deadliest of the entire Civil War. Some had gone from nearly 200 pounds down to under 100. When the war ended, these men were finally released and gathered at Vicksburg, waiting for transport home to the Midwest. For many, it was the first good news in years. The U.S. government paid a steamboat operator $5 per enlisted soldier and $10 per officer to carry them north. In the war's final weeks, it was the most lucrative contract available. The Union's chief quartermaster at Vicksburg, Colonel Reuben Hatch, was already notorious for corruption. He allegedly took a bribe from the Sultana's captain, J. Cass Mason, to route the departing prisoners onto Mason's boat alone. A junior officer urged Hatch to move some of the men onto other boats docked nearby that had plenty of room. Hatch refused and never even boarded the Sultana himself to see how crowded it had become. By the time she was ready to leave, the Sultana carried more than 6 times her rated capacity. Soldiers were packed onto every deck, every stairwell, every open space. Days earlier, an engineer had warned that one of the ship's boilers needed major repairs. Captain Mason authorized only a quick patch instead, unwilling to delay and lose his lucrative contract. The overboarded ship made its way north, stopping in Memphis, Tennessee before continuing on into the night. Just outside Memphis, in the early hours of April 27th, 3 overstrained boilers exploded within seconds of each other, tearing the center of the ship apart and igniting an uncontrollable fire. Hundreds who survived the blast itself now faced the cold, fast-moving Mississippi current in the dark. Few soldiers of that area could swim, and after months of starvation in prison camps, most were simply too weak and malnourished to fight the current for long anyways. Word reached Memphis, and rescue boats rowed out into the darkness, pulling as many survivors as they could find from the wreckage and the water. By morning, an estimated 1,100 to 1,800 people were dead. Nobody has ever pinned down the exact number because corrupt loading meant nobody kept an accurate count of who was on board. It remains the deadliest maritime disaster in American history, worse than the sinking of the Titanic 37 years later. But it happened just 12 days after Lincoln's assassination. American newspapers were consumed by his funeral train's journey across the country and the manhunt for John Wilkes Booth. Most of the dead were soldiers from small Midwestern towns, far from the East Coast press and with no political connections. Their story barely made the news at all. An investigation followed. Reuben Hatch resigned his commission before he could be court-martialed, and as a civilian, simply ignored the subpoenas that followed. Only one officer, Captain Frederick Speed, was actually put on trial. Speed was found guilty of grossly overcrowding the ship. Then the Army's own Judge Advocate General overturned the conviction, ruling that Speed hadn't personally loaded a single soldier aboard. In the end, no one was ever held accountable. More than 1,000 people, men who had survived a war and a prison camp, died from greed, corruption, and a patched boiler. And most of America never even learned their names. Follow for more of history's forgotten disasters.